All right, so let's see. Oh, the dreaded blank canvas, right? Always good to start things a little bit loose. Just get your wrist moving and see what happens. I think we'll do something kind of dark and spooky. This is one of my favorite genres. I don't know exactly what to draw. I usually start with something a little dark and spooky. Do some kind of a wraith character. So how's the mic to music ratio? Someone could comment on that. That would be awesome. Okay, adjusted the music a little bit there. Question, does an animator need concept art and illustration? Concept art and illustration encompasses basic drawing skills, which I think are incredibly important to animation. So in that way, I think if we kind of think about the Venn diagram of art skills, there's an incredible amount of overlap there. So, while you may not need specific concept art and illustration in your portfolio, there's so many overlapping skills that I would say that those things are definitely relevant to each other. Whoa, not too big there. I think a nice big oversized weapon might be kind of fun to play with here. If you guys aren't familiar with this technique of flipping your image often, that's a really good one to get in the habit of doing there. It refreshes your eyes and helps you see when you have issues with symmetry. Starts to become incredibly obvious when you do things like faces, where bilateral symmetry is, we're very sensitive to any kind of awkwardness in the face, but irrelevant to really the whole composition. My favorite slasher. Let's see. My gosh, I would say that in the horror genre, slashers are probably my least favorite. I guess because it just feels like a lot of times it's like gratuitous violence with not a lot of narrative supporting it. But I think Halloween series is maybe one of the better slasher series.
Fresh for everyone. Indeed knows.
So I guess maybe Mike Myers would be my favorite too.
Like hiring someone who can make a real impact. Indeed can help you find high impact.
This guy's looking pretty fun.
Any long-term contracts, and you pay only for what you need, thanks to our super flexible payment options. So why not take that next step with Indeed? Get started with a free 70.
Okay, Red says, I'm thinking of joining the college. Do you have any advice? Well, I would say go for it.
Terms and conditions apply.
It genuinely is a really awesome community. And one of the things that I like about it is that we have really, really small class sizes. So maximum of 4 students per class. And we're all on Slack together, and just a lot of good kind of creative vibes going on. Even though we're online, it's a little different than an on-site physical campus. We do our best to try to simulate that environment through the online community. And of course, we have a lot of great mentors. Sometimes when you're playing with abstract shapes, you can lose sight a little bit of the construction of things, the three-dimensional form, the geometry. So it's good to stay honest with yourself about the direction of things and simplify where you need to. Find the edge. I think I'm liking these guys really. This guy's really long arms, kind of creepy, sinewy arms there. I might play with a couple different faces. When you're this early on in a piece, you do really want to give yourself the option of a few different design ideas. It's very quick to iterate when everything is so loose. Once you get further on in the piece and everything starts to tighten up, gosh, that's when you're in a world of trouble if you don't know what you're up to. Okay, so this guy's got some kind of medieval armor going on, but I don't want to get like historically accurate. I want to have a little more fun with this, so I'm just going to be kind of inspired by that. And then just kind of do my own thing. When you're inventing things as part of a fantasy or sci-fi universe, an alternate imaginary world, you can't do anything you want, but it is good to think about having a couple cues to things in our world, because it makes the piece relatable, and there's powerful psychology in whatever you are relating it to. You can tap into that If you don't have any of that, then you miss out on a great psychological component. Yeah, so this is actually a playlist on Spotify called Stream Beats Synthwave. So this is like synthwave's I guess it's kind of a newer genre. It's like a retro electronic genre that is definitely pulling inspiration from sounds of the 80s. All those old synthesizers, the classic Korgs and Rolands and Yamahas. Create a little more of a distinct ridge to this helmet. That'd be cool. I'm not going to get too precise with these lines because I'm going to give myself a bit of freedom to play around when I start adding tone. What about souls trying to escape from the scythe? Oh my goodness. Sounds intense. I think we might be able to play with some magical energy going on in this piece. That sounds like a good idea. So Drawn Skull says, yeah, I'm a huge fan of horror, and I'm planning to create horror content for animation, movies, and video games. That's really cool. So we can play with maybe a little bit of a armored quality on the side as well. That might be kind of neat. Evaluate our composition, maybe bring this in just a little bit. This character isn't really that tall. So you guys are working on any art out there, remember to save your work, save often. Technology is a fragile thing. And then we might at the end play around with a little bit of sort of like spooky energy rising up off this guy. That might be kind of neat. So one of the things that you can be looking for at this stage too is tangents, where you have kind of unfortunate areas that are aligned with each other. And what you really want is you're trying to create as much depth and as much of a sense of 3D shapes as you can in your image, and a clear overlap between those things is the way to do that. So whenever you have, for example, if I had this body form, this wispy body form here, and it was riding right alongside that arm there, that is just a killer tangent. Our eyes don't know which one is in front of which. We can sort of assume that the arm is in front. So we can kind of surmise that based on everything going on. But why make the viewer have to do that? Why not give them a better time by just widening the body and making a clear overlap between the two? Much easier read. It's definitely something to think about early on. Any tips for concept art and illustration to add to my ideas of horror? Well, I think going out and trying to find some inspiration is a great starting point. Really kind of soaking in lots of content. It's a great place to start. You want as many ideas to pull from as you can. There's no new ideas, really. It's just a reconfiguration of older ideas. And maybe there's like a little bit of this kind of bandaginess hanging off the end here. And speaking of that, maybe we should start to bring in a little bit of color, just so that it's not so boring to look at. Yeah, there we go. Also for me, just my eyes kind of read and are more perceptive to warmer tones versus just pure grays. It's grays just kind of harder for my eyes to see and evaluate. The thing to think about is some of those parallels in your piece, giving a sense of perspective to the image where you can. I mean, this is an organic form, but whenever we can create a few little parallels that the eye can latch onto, it will give a sense of space to the scene. And then we'll have more opportunities later when we start bringing in atmosphere and cast shadows and things like that. And I think that setup overall is working pretty well for me here. So at this point, let's do this before we dive in head first. Let's give ourselves the opportunity to explore a couple ideas here. Let's do a couple variations and see what we like best. This is the joy of digital art, is we can very easily iterate our ideas. So on this one here, first thing I'm going to do is play with this helmet shape. And maybe we do this one has some kind of a horn coming up in the front here. That could be interesting. Yeah, This is the time to get out all of your bad ideas, right? This might look really dumb, but you figure that out at this stage versus at the end, right? And you're really in trouble. You're stuck with it. It's interesting that starts to take on kind of an insectoid quality. Maybe his shoulder pad has some spikiness to it in this version. Yeah, exactly. Take ideas from your idols. Yeah, I mean, that's a great place to start. And you obviously idolize them for a reason because they probably have some really great things in their portfolio. And, you know, they had to get their start somewhere too. So it's an excellent place to get your ideas from. Okay, and then we're going to play around with the weapon here. Maybe this is more of an axe sort of a situation.
At Ralph's, we know there's never a good time to run out of fresh. Luckily, our delivery and free pickup make it easy to grab what you need. So whether it's a few extra buns for the backyard barbecue or some miscellaneous munchies for movie night, we make it easy to get back to doing, well, whatever you were doing. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
And now you'll find more ways to save on your favorites when you download.
Hey, Patrick, welcome to the stream.
5 times in one transaction. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
Indeed.
Okay, that guy's looking interesting.
Step is the most important one, like hiring someone who can make.
Let's see, what else can we do here? Maybe we can play with the face a little bit. Maybe this is less of a human face or a human skull. Maybe this is a little bit more creature-like, extended out a little bit.
Why not take that next step with Indeed? Get started with a free $75 credit for your first job post and get in front of more quality candidates. Go to Indeed.com/high-impact. That's Indeed.com/high-impact. Terms and conditions apply.
This guy's got some drool coming out of his mouth here. He's a mouth breather. Okay, that's some interesting stuff going on there. Let's go up to this guy over here. Where you at, buddy? Okay, he's on that layer there. Let's go with another weapon idea here. Maybe this is more of a straight spear, sort of a glaive thing, perhaps. What do I think about that? Well, first of all, I think that angle looks really odd, so let's not do that. Let's see. And maybe the weapon is in the front here. Yeah, there we go. That's just a better overall solution to that problem there. Let's give another go at this face, try a little bit of a different variant. A little bit of a hybrid of the two, maybe, where we go not fully human and not so much animal, but maybe a kind of a mix of the two. Might end up giving us kind of a bat-like quality. Right, I'm kind of liking this. Got some interesting stuff going on. And so what we'll do is we get a few of these thumbnails going and we can take a step back and see what's working, what isn't, and then we can kind of cross-pollinate some of them together, hybridize some of our ideas to form the best one. Try shrinking this guy's head just a little bit here. Have this guy maybe looking up a little bit more. So Patrick asks, can you explain your general thought process, how you generate good design? Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. But I think one of the things that I do rely on is things like golden ratios and trying to create clear shape hierarchy. So ultimately, when you say good design, what you mean is a design that is going to feel like a pleasing image to most people. So it's about understanding how humans perceive things. And generally, as humans, we like to have easy decisions to make. We like to know which way to go. We don't want there to be any confusion. And that's kind of a core part of how we make good design decisions. If we create even splits between things, if we create 50-50 splits in compositions and designs, it creates tension for the viewer because they don't know which side is more important, right? We want to give emphasis to things. We want to direct the viewer. By directing the viewer, there is great ease on the eyes, right? So this is where we start getting into things like pleasing ratios, 70-30 ratios, where we have areas of visual rest and areas that are focal points, or where we have our detail, because this unevenness here gives immediate emphasis, and that is sort of a root part of what makes a design pleasing. And this management of these ratios can go all the way as macro as the entire canvas down to the individual components on a person's design, on their individual clothing elements or accessories. So it's almost like a Russian doll effect, right? We have these sort of nesting compositions within compositions. You want to get to a point where you're always evaluating those ratios so that you're not having to think as actively about them, and they're just happening naturally just through muscle memory. You're always checking for those things. And it's just a guideline, right? It's not to say that needs to be always the case, but if we want to talk about, are there any kind of rules to design, that's one of the ones that kind of comes forward for me more than others. Okay, so I think we've got some interesting options going on here. I do feel like give some numbers here, try to feel legit here, like we're actually doing a little assignment. So we've got some three dudes. We got axe dude, scythe dude, and spear dude. I do think I like number 2, but maybe with the weapon of number 1. I don't know, what do you guys think? What weapon is your favorite out of the 3? I think the weapon is the one that I'm sort of most unsure about. I think all 3 of them could work. I think maybe 1 or 3 are a little more fun. They have a little more meat to them. We might have more fun just because there's more to work with there. The spear is a bit thin, and I do think 2 is probably the way to go, other than the weapon. Patrick says, I always try to keep the big, medium, small in mind, but sometimes that is holding me back a bit. Yeah, and I think that's what I mean by their guidelines, but not hard, fast rules, because you don't want to feel really tense as you're working. I mean, that's like the enemy of art, right? Is when you kind of tense up and everything becomes very rigid. And so if the rules start doing that to you, then the rules are not helping you anymore. But I find the rules helpful when I'm dealing with a blank canvas, because the blank canvas is just, it's like infinite space. Anything can happen. I need some kind of guidelines to help me make choices, which is also where things like a prompt can help you. A written prompt, verbal prompt of some kind that outlines some parameters to the narrative, to the character's background, hero or villain, main character, side character. Do they have to be able to emote? Do they need to be able to speak? What kind of action are they involved in? Kind of like locomotive characteristics are necessary, right? Those are all things that help with the blank canvas. They give us those guidelines, and then design-wise, we have some of those other rules to keep in mind as well. The combination of the two, I think, gives a decent framework so that the blank canvas isn't quite as intimidating. Okay, so I think it's time we can move on here, and we're going to go with number 2. We're going to use the axe of number 3. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move. Let's do this. We're going to increase our canvas size. Make sure we have enough pixels to work with. I'm going to shrink all of these dudes down, and we'll keep them around. Move them down to the bottom, though. And down here. And then we'll take number 2, move him up, reframe him for the overall composition here. Let's get the weapon we like for number 3. Oh, thanks, Patrick. I'm glad you liked it. Patrick was just referring to a little video I created for the CGS community, painting a medieval knights character. It was a kind of a shorter video, but I tried to hit some of the main stages of my process. So that's one of the things that you'll have access to as part of the CGS community. Is the mentors are oftentimes creating little demo videos, little extras that we'll post up for people to take a look at and talk about. Okay, so let's do, I don't want to get super clean with the lines, as I mentioned before, because I want to have some freedom while I'm painting to tweak and modify, but I'm going to do one more passive lines here just to explore the shapes in a little bit greater detail. So I'm just knocking back my original drawing. I'm going to keep it around, though. I'm not going to get rid of it completely. I just cut the main one out of the layer here and put it on its own so I can do some flipping on it, and I'm not worried about flipping all the other little thumbnails at the bottom of the image.
At Ralph's, we know there's never a good time to run out of fresh. Luckily, our delivery and free pickup make it easy to grab what you need. So whether it's a few extra buns for the backyard barbecue or some miscellaneous munchies for movie night, we make it easy to get back to doing, well, whatever you were doing. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
And now you'll find more ways to save on your favorites. When you download digital coupons, you can use up to 5 times in one transaction. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
Indeed knows that for any business, your next step is the most important one, like hiring someone who can make a real impact. Indeed can help you find high-impact hires faster, without any long-term contracts, and you pay only for what you need, thanks to our super flexible payment options. So why not take that next step with Indeed? Get started with a free $75 credit for your first job post and get in front of more quality candidates. Go to Indeed.com/high-impact. That's Indeed.com/high-impact. Terms and conditions apply.
Patrick asks, do you have the same process for designing a hero character and a normal side character, with a side character not stealing the show from the main character? So I think that the main thing that I would differentiate between a hero character and a side character would be making sure that their face is visible. Like a side character can have something like a mask on or a helmet that obscures their face, and we may not need to see their face, but a hero character, typically you're going to want to be able to see their face. Or that their outfit allows for some variability in that regard, that they can easily sort of take elements off or accommodate multiple outfits. Side character, you may not see them in as many configurations, and we may not care as much about them as an individual. And your design brief will be hopefully very clear about those requirements. And if they aren't, then you'll want to ask your director, hey, what do you think this character is going to need to do? How are we going to interact with them? Okay, this guy's got kind of a crazy hunchback situation going on. Some opportunities to play around with some fun armor design back here. Yeah, see, here's where I'm getting into a situation where I'm evaluating the shape hierarchy here and noticing that we might be getting a little bit too even with those. I'll refer to the even striping of shapes sometimes as banding. Like you have like bands on something. Banding is one of those things that's is an indication that you might not have good shape hierarchy going on. So let's do something like that. And then we can get his back anatomy exposed a little bit underneath that. It gives us a good starting point anyway, and we can reevaluate as we paint this thing. Make sure he has kind of like these bony, sinewy fingers going on. He's gripping, so we're not going to get a whole lot of opportunity to show that quality, but we can do our best. All my students, if they're watching this at some point, they'll recognize this ground plane. I'm always harping on everybody to make sure they drop in that ground plane in the image. Otherwise, your character is going to be floating around. Although this guy, in this case, is actually kind of a floaty kind of a guy. So, but we don't want to. We still want to be aware of that sense of space in the scene. Drawn Skull asks, what's the difference between concept art and illustration when it comes to film, games, and animation? Which course would I recommend to take, concept or illustration? Well, there is a ton of overlap between the two. All the core skills are basically the same, but illustration, it is It's different in the sense that it's trying to do a lot in a single image. It's usually a lot more narrative heavy, and we're favoring drama and mood over clarity. Oftentimes in concept art, you're favoring clarity because you're handing the design off to some other part of the team that needs to interpret the design, 3D model it out, or build it in real life. And so clarity is going to be something you're favoring, and oftentimes you'll be doing art that is more component based, meaning you'll do an individual character, you'll do an individual prop, an individual vehicle. You might do turnarounds where you show the same thing at multiple angles. Those are things that are not going to be happening in the illustration world. And in the illustration world, you're going to be doing things like characters in an environment, maybe multiple characters in a scene. You'll be trying to capture the drama of that moment. Like one of the, I think, more common things to be doing in the illustration world is something like a book cover, for example, where you're really trying to capture an entire book narrative in a single image. And that's a unique aspect of illustration over concept art. Okay, so I think we're making some pretty good progress on this guy here. I feel like we'll be able to dive into the painting pretty well after we get through with this last sort of line exploration phase. I'll just go with some sort of simple wraps on his waist area to give him that sense that he can bend and flex, and his armor isn't going to be limiting him too much. In some game worlds, we don't really care quite as much about things like pieces penetrating into other pieces. It's just kind of what we call a gameism. We don't always have to be super aware of that. Sometimes the trade-off is worth it to have a really crazy cool armor design that maybe the shoulders kind of would impale the person's head when they raise their arm up, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing if the design is really cool and it doesn't break the immersion in the setting that it's shown in. That's, I guess, another thing to think about when you go into a design. You know, with this one here, I want it to be semi-functional looking. You know, it doesn't have to be super realistic or anything, but I don't want it to be so out there that you kind of question its function too much. I don't know, do we actually have a moderator for this channel? I don't know that anybody is actually moderating this thing. It might be something worth looking at some point here. All right, how am I feeling about that hand there? Do I want to go? I might want to rotate that hand a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, let's go this way with it. It's twisting a little too much. I was forcing it into a position that I wanted it to be in, but it wasn't flowing well with the arm. So we're going to just tweak that a little bit there. This is where like a reference of a person in a pose can be a little helpful, because you can catch some of those nuances of the joint strain and whatnot. But I can't recommend life drawing enough to everyone. Yeah, okay, that feels a little bit better. We get some of this raggedy cloth flowing down here. Just your typical undead raggedy cloth. Oh, that's actually, we want to have that. If anything, it's going to be flowing kind of down this direction, but
Indeed knows that for any business,
I don't know that I want to break the silhouette here. We have a really nice clean envelope on the back side of this character. And if I start to get some of the cloth flowing back here, it isn't a terrible thing. It might be kind of interesting because we do have a nice clean side over here. I guess it's another thing worth mentioning is we're talking about envelope, which is essentially the kind of outer silhouette of a character. We generally want to try to keep it a little bit simpler, powerful, distinct, but simpler. The more clever and funky the silhouette gets, the harder it is for you to kind of interpret it. It just gets busy and lost. And it's, the outer shapes are they are the rules of design that we've talked about with ratios and things like that apply the same way to the outer shapes. So if your helmet, let's say we're doing a helmet design and our helmet is, doing this kind of thing, and this side is all asymmetrical over here. This is what we call too clever. I have my friend Paul Richards, another amazing designer. He used this term all the time when we'd hang out. He would say, "This shape is too clever. It's too many little ins and outs of this thing. It's nonsense." So you want to go for a bit of a simpler envelope. Your eye's going to latch onto that easier. And if you're going to have a more complex side to the silhouette, try to keep it on one side. If you have like a simple shape, like let's say we're doing a helmet, like a sci-fi helmet or something, we've got this nice kind of clean visor element on the front. This is the front here, and the back is where we can maybe get crazy with some like tubes and wires and things shooting off. And then we have like a nice simple side and a more complex side. So if you're going to need to do that, try to think about that sense of balance there. So, that idea, how do we apply it here? Well, this is kind of our simple side. So if we did want to get crazy with that back element here, we could, and it would give maybe a sense of motion. Let's keep that in the back of our head, something we can maybe play with as we get further into the render. And this is an area down here where I really don't want to get too line specific, because this is just going to be a bunch of like tonal energy going on. So we can keep that pretty vague. And I think this piece will end up being pretty painterly anyway. We're on kind of a 2-hour window here, and I wanted to try to put something together that feels a little bit complete, and getting a super tight render in that time period is a little bit tricky, and we'll see how far we get. I don't actually know how far we're going to get with this image, but we'll try to keep a good pace here. Yeah, well, Jeremy is a very, very busy man. So, maybe at some point we can, as our channel continues to grow here, we can think about getting some exclusive mods or something. Maybe we'll play with the idea of a hole in this thing and maybe some kind of a element dangling. Yeah, I think that'll be a cool little element there. And we'll play with some damage and things later on. Give a little more age and story to these items. This guy doesn't look like he's, you know, fresh out of the factory. He's probably seen some hard times. All right, I'm gonna flip this thing again and just kind of take note of everything I want to see. I like his hunched quality. Just kind of evaluating the overall rotation of the character. You know, look how different it feels when we go when we rotate him all the way like that, right? Totally different feel. Okay, I actually think that might be good to just do a little slight rotation on him. And luckily we have a bit of ambiguity in the lower body here, how it connects. So we can just readjust our sense of this bottom plane and some of the gravitational aspects we were playing with. We can just reorient those a little bit. I do like this arm kind of hunched down and lower. I am considering maybe shortening this a little bit, feeling like it might be pushed just a little too far. Again, these are really good things to be evaluating at this point and not later on. Flip that again. See, I want to play with the width a little bit, maybe make it a little bit wider. Yeah. Okay. I think we're ready to start to block in some of the lighting here, start to get a sense of that, so that'll be cool. First thing to do here, this is not that exciting a phase, but an important one. You can start to fill in the silhouette a little bit. Use just a warm gray here. Oh, that's a little light, hard to see. Let's go a bit darker. And this doesn't have to be super clean. But we have a rough idea of where we're headed with this shape, so we can get close enough. Because the next step is going to be blocking in some of the major shadows and get a sense of if the light direction is working or not, where we're going to have some challenging value puzzles where the overlap might be tricky and we need to be finding solutions to create a reasonable amount of clarity. I'm going to put this underneath and then we'll set this to oh, well, isn't that interesting? Oh, it's because I painted that on top. Okay. It's all good. Yeah, this brush I'm using here is basically just a regular flat hard edged brush, but it has shape dynamics turned on to pen pressure so that I can push lighter and get a smaller line and push heavier to get a bigger line in. It's nice for doing things like basically what we're doing is masking where we have to get into tiny little crevices and also work quickly and fill big broad areas too, so that size modulation on the fly is a great efficiency boost. And when you do this step too, you'll be able to really get a clear sense of that silhouette and see whether you like it or not. And here I was a little sloppy about that arm shape, but again, I'm not too worried about that. Can make that correction easily during the next stage. Not sure what course to choose. Okay, yeah, it is tricky. I think maybe think about maybe a career path a little bit. That's hard to do sometimes at the beginning of your journey, but try to think about, you know, what do you want to be doing every day? Because there is a distinction between those two in that regard as well. But like there is tons of overlap, as I said before. You know, if you're a illustrator, it's likely that you'll also have opportunities to do concept art and vice versa. It's not like you're going to get totally stuck doing only one. But yeah, it's worth thinking about. Drawn Skull says, I want to be creating characters, worlds, vehicles, weapons, environments, etc. for the things I want to do, which is tell stories. Well, you know, world building is, I think, maybe a little bit more leaning on the concept art side. So I'd say maybe that would be, given your expressed desires there, that might be a slightly better route for you at this point. Give him his little ghosty tail here. Casper, the unfriendly ghost. Okay, so now we've got a nice shape figured out for our character, and we can use it as a mask, which is going to be helpful for this next stage, which will be blocking in the graphic shadows of the piece. So I'm going to use Control on the keyboard, click this layer here, get our selection defined, and make a new layer. Click this button down here and make that the alpha mask so that we can paint freely in here, and it is locked to that shape. Okay, now I'm going to pick a lighting direction. So now we're determining our main key light here. And this is a concept, not an illustration, so we can favor clarity over drama. So, you know, we don't want anything to get completely lost. So something from the front, probably front to left, because of the character oriented in this way. The three-quarter pose, more of the character on this side is revealed. So light from this side also makes sense. So we'll have our light kind of coming in from the scene. Actually, I'll draw it out for everybody here. We got our light kind of coming into the scene like this. Maybe a little bit more from above. So something like that is going to be our source of illumination there. And so now we can go in, and I'm going to be using just a single value here for the most part. I might use one more. We'll see. Sometimes I need to use one more just to get some of these areas to be clear, but I'm going to try to block in the light with just this value here and have a very kind of graphical approach to this overall. What this is going to let me do is ensure that the readability is strong and all the shapes are showing up the way I want. Because this graphic lighting here is really the thing that people will notice before anything else in the piece. But first, we're going to take a moment and get my music going again. We lost the music. We can't lose the music. It's very important. What is this here? Oh no. Well, it looks like I've run out of my Spotify free. Do I need to log in? Maybe I need to log in. Maybe that's what I need to do. That's probably the secret here, is I didn't log in. Okay, sorry guys. Just going to take a second here and figure this out. Okay, I guess we'll just continue with Facebook. They are trying to make this as difficult as possible for me here. It's very strange. Okay, I guess we'll have to continue without music then. That's kind of a bummer that Spotify just doesn't let you listen to music. Should I just sign up for an account maybe? Maybe that's what we should do. Okay. Seems to work pretty well. Okay, now I liked the synthwave stuff better than whatever this is, so let's go back to that. Sorry guys, I didn't realize we were going to have a time limit on our music there. It's like no more music for you. Okay, I think we're back in business. Normally, I'm listening to my own my own music on iTunes or Pandora, and it's all copyrighted stuff. So of course on our stream here we can't do any of that. So we have to use this like stream safe music, which it sounds pretty good, to be honest, for it being kind of open source content. It sounds pretty good. But yeah, it's a bit of a hassle to have to manage all that stuff. Yeah, Drawn Skull asks, is concept art what I teach? I do. I teach the intro and advanced concept art courses. And then I think it says Snipe. It's in red, so I can hardly read. I think it's Snipe says, hey, quick question. What are some good alternative softwares for arts besides Photoshop? Gosh, it's I am so Photoshop exclusive that I'm probably the wrong person to be answering that question. But I know that a lot of people like Procreate, which is like a tablet-based painting program. I think some people have almost completely abandoned Photoshop for that program, so it must be quite good. I haven't had a chance to explore it yet, but I hear really good things. And I think I don't know if Corel Painter is really a thing anymore. It used to be more of a thing back in 2004, 2003, and then I think it's kind of just died off slowly over the years. So I don't know. Don't quote me on that. It might be still really well regarded in certain circles, but I know some of the earlier concept artists, more publicly known concept artists back in the days of like conceptart.org and stuff, when you had like before Massive Black was a thing, you had people like Justin Sweet using Corel Painter exclusively, and I think he probably still uses it. So I think that was maybe one of the more prevalent ones back then. I think Photoshop, Corel Painter, and Procreate, and I guess Autodesk Sketchbook, I think it's called. I think some people like that one as well. That's kind of more of like a tablet-based situation. The struggle that I have is with how reliant I am on like the keyboard shortcuts. It makes me so much faster when I'm working, and a lot of those programs, they struggle to be fast enough with that stuff. And so I've tried many things over the years, and I've never found anything that quite replaces Photoshop for me. Yeah, I think those would be the ones that I hear about most. Might give those a shot. So as you can see here, we're making very graphic choices about the lighting, and this is going to help us with that readability in the end. We're going to find maybe just a little bit of light on this breastplate here, and then this stuff's going to get pretty lost here in the stomach section. And I think we can justify this belt getting some light on the corner there. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Diana suggests Krita and GIMP as alternatives to Photoshop. I haven't tried either of those. I've heard of GIMP before. But yeah, thanks for the suggestions. That might be something worth looking at. And Clip Studio, I have heard of that one as well. So there you go. There's a lot of options out there. Affinity Photo is good. You still have to pay for it, but it's not subscription based. I haven't heard of Affinity Photo, but yeah, that one, if it's not subscription based, that sounds like a good maybe budget alternative. The subscription model that Adobe has is really challenging for aspiring artists that don't have income. That's a rough one. Okay, so this body's going to be casting shadow down on this handle here. Gonna give it a bit of a cast shadow on that there and see, where do we think that light's going to start to come in and hit it, maybe around there. We don't have to be, mathematically super precise about everything. We just need to get it looking logical and reading well. Let's get a little bit of shadow on this side. Let's see. New to digital art, you're thinking of getting a tablet like a Huion, and you just wanted some software to work on it with. Yeah, I think that's the ones mentioned. Especially if they're a budget-friendly option, sounds like a good place to start. And, it could be that some of the stuff is going to be kind of self-luminous, glowing at the end, but I'm not thinking about anything like that at this stage. I'm thinking about everything very physically, and then we can make some of those adjustments later. So kind of a fun thing to do at this stage is we can turn off the lines And we have a little preview of sort of the tonal lighting component of the image. You know, what's the silhouette, what's the overall shape's going to be like, and just gives us a little preview into the future of the piece. And we can adjust our kind of core value here and the value of our shadows as a starting point for our image. We can kind of mess with these right now and see, you know, how intense do we want these shadows to be. If we have a very kind of ambiently lit scene, you know, this shadow is not going to get that dark. For a more dramatic scene, of course, they're going to get incredibly dark. But I like to go not super dark with this because I want the ability to kind of expand the value range further as I more fully realize these shapes. So, you know, that might be a good place to be at with it. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Let's turn those lines back on here. Drop the lines back. And so what I'll do at this stage is I'm going to take all of these layers we've got going on here, and I'm going to put them in a group, and I'm just going to call it 0, 1, because this just represents sort of like the first stage of our image where we have things in separate layers. And I like to just kind of keep that around in case I want to open it, crack it open, see how I did things, deconstruct it later, maybe use some layers. I don't know, it's just nice to kind of have it around. And then duplicate the layer there. Now we're on 0, 2, or kind of on the next phase of our image.
A good time to run out of fresh. Luckily, our delivery and free pickup make it easy to grab what you need. So whether it's a few extra buns
now I'm
for
going
backyard
to
barbecue or some
merge them
miscellaneous
together.
munchies for movie night, we make it easy to get back to doing, well, whatever you were doing. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
And now you'll find more ways to save on your favorites. When you download digital coupons, you can use up to 5 times in one transaction. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
And now it's pretty much just about going in and doing all the halftones and just more fully realizing these shapes here. Doing our ambient occlusion as well, which is sort of the darkest part of our piece. I'm gonna make sure my shadows are not totally black there. Ooh, that's really warm. Let's go right around there. How does that feel? That's good. Let's put our shadow color in a swatch here. We'll just call this shadow. Have it sitting around for easy access. And here's where squinting your eyes is helpful, because now we're really trying to make these forms believable. The next stage, when we get this feeling pretty good, is we're going to multiply in some of the sort of material, the local material tones. So, this armor wants to be darker overall than his body. We can start to kind of layer that in. I'm going for kind of a grayscale render still at this point. All right, glad you like the music, Cassidy. I tend to start on the face just because it immediately establishes a personality, kind of gets me caring about the image.
Hi, I'm a helpful Southern California Honda person, and as usual, we've been doing random acts of helpfulness, like covering people's rent and donating over 15,000 face shields to hospitals. And during the Honda Summer Clearance event, we can help you too, with a great deal on an award-winning Honda, like the Civic. And people buy Civics more than any other car in America. Click the dealer locator link to find a dealer near you, and go to SoCalHondaDealers.com to suggest a random act of helpfulness. Based on
Now
averages,
adjusting the
market calendar
background
year-to-date
value a little bit.
Small car segment, new retail registrations in U.S.
Suppose at this point we can get rid of our little helper sun. Where is that layer? Oops, my Photoshop froze. Come back to me, Photoshop. Oh, there we go. Make sure we save our work here. Gremlins in the system trying to thwart our plans. Right, so we were attempting to find our little sun diagram. There we go. It's that top guy. Okay, we'll just get rid of that. Trying to minimize distractions now at this point in the image so we can get a better feel of its overall progress. Gonna drop in a little bit of a gradient here so we can establish a little bit of fall off to the lighting on the character. And I'll erase it from this handle area here. Actually, you know what? I don't mind it there. Sometimes happy accidents, right? So, I'm blurring this shadow right here. It's important to remember the three kind of major types of shadows. You've got form shadows, cast shadows, and ambient occlusion. So form shadows are this one that I've softened. It's basically the shadow that happens as the light rolls across the surface. Cast shadows are where one object occludes the light and projects its shape onto something else behind it. And then ambient occlusion are the sort of deepest little crevices of the piece where the lighting from the ambient environment can't get to. So those are going to be the darkest parts of the piece. And I like to keep those a little bit distinct in my mind, at least understand their kind of unique properties and why they're happening. Okay. Definitely going to want that ripped cloth to have a little bit of darker value than the stuff around it. But I think what we'll do now is we're going to multiply in some of the local values that we want to start using, and a little bit of the colors too. Let me just give this a bit more mid-tone, just a little bit more texture. Just get it not feeling like such a blank situation there. to give this guy a little bit more atmosphere in his scene. And then end up having a little bit of rim lighting coming off from the right side here. So just going to pop that in. Okay, multiply layer. So I'm thinking I want this guy's armor to be kind of a gold. Kind of a muted warm gold tone. And I might normally spend a little more time on the stage before this, but kind of getting close to the end of the stream here. I wanted to at least give you guys a sense of the color blocking that I was going to do for this guy. Hey, you're welcome, Drawn Skull. You ask, is it me or is it, or are they bringing 80s horror back? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of, resurrection of 80s ideas. I think that things like Stranger Things maybe brought that more into the forefront. Let's see, you know what? I actually don't want that part to be gold. Let's go with that part there, and then we'll do a bit of gold on the end here. Okay, next one. Let's do the skin. I'm gonna go with like a kind of a sickly bluish purple. Let's see if we can get that feeling right. And the thing is too, these are on separate layers. So what we can do is we can pop these in and then make adjustments to them before we lock in on them. So that's kind of nice. guess we can just go right into that arm, can't we? And we'll leave the eyes out. I'm gonna definitely do something different with the eyes. And I'm looking at this and thinking probably definitely going to go a little lighter with it, but that's fine because we can see it very clearly as we do this coloring process, and then we can tweak it. Hand's going to need some adjustment as we paint it up, but that's fine. Okay, and then I think, you know what, let's just do it on the body here too, even though I think this is going to get more spectral. But it could be that it starts a little bit more normal skin at the top here, and then as we get down more toward the bottom, we can go more spectral with it. I don't know that I want it to be truncated right here as it emerges from the sort of drapery at the waist. Let's be careful about truncating designs like that. It just starts to give you this like Mr. Potato Head kind of quality going on, where you have distinct compartmentalized elements all kind of jammed into each other. You want to think about transitions and stuff. Okay, now that we have that skin blocked in, let's adjust it. All right, now let's do the sort of loinclothy feeling stuff. I'm going to go darker with that. Not that dark, my goodness. Let's okay, let's try that. That looks better. Now I gotta resample. See, look how light that is, but we're on multiply, so that's really getting quite dark on us. See, my next class is in an hour from now. I wonder, is there somebody slotted to be on this channel right after me? I wonder if there's any CGS folks in here. Let me know. I can go over a little bit here. Keep working for a little bit on this. But if someone's in this next slot, then I can hop right off and let them start their stream. Okay, so that's that block out there, and then let's do the axe in a bit of a darker gray too. That'll look cool. So, you know, this is, like I said, this is multiply, so it's a blending mode that's still using all of those grayscale values that we established in the last step.
There's never a good time to run out of fresh. Luckily, our delivery and free pickup make it easy to grab what you need. So whether it's a few extra buns for the backyard barbecue or
all right, we've hit the end here. I'm gonna keep going until my class, or maybe not that long, but I'll go a little bit over, and then if someone messages me an angry message, then I'll then I'll hop off. But I kind of want to just get a little further with this if possible. You know, this is a little bit slower because we did take that step at the beginning to draw a few different ideas out, which kind of wanted to show that process at least a little bit. More of a simulation of how I would actually approach character design with a few options. Draw them out, show them to the client, get in sync with them on it. You know what? I'm going to do that with the little ring here. Let's go silver with that too. Or gray, I guess. It's not necessarily silver metal. That would be... Well, I guess it could be that dark if it was very tarnished, right? But I'm not thinking of it as like a shiny silver, that's for sure. And then the last component here will be the sort of bandage wraps and the ones that we're going to see on his waist. And I might actually bring them into the arms a little bit as well. And that we can just do kind of a warmer yellow. Something maybe like that. But it might end up needing to be a lot lighter because we are using multiply. Let's see how that looks. Actually, that's not too bad. Let's roll with it. All right, now I can kind of play with things, take her around a little bit, just see how dark or light we want stuff to be. How saturated we might want something to be. Let's see if we play around. Let's see if we can go real purpley with it. We can go more. Oh, that kind of weird pinkish tone is kind of nice. You go more green. Oh, that green is kind of cool too. I think maybe the green is the way to go. A little more green blue. Yeah, it's got that nice kind of sickly undead thing going on, which I think I like. Let's see about the brightness of his armor here. So we go real bright, go darker. I think that darker is probably more what I'm thinking. Because then when we punch in the highlights too, you know, they're going to be really impactful on this sort of a darker base tone. Yeah, I think that works good. All right, so this is probably a good point where we can switch now to, we were doing kind of a history of the image here in the layers, so we can now duplicate this and call this 03. So we reach kind of a milestone in the piece where we've got our established colors. And I'm going to go ahead and merge everything together again. Oops, make sure we're... I see. Okay, so because we don't have our base tone in there. Let's merge that together with that. Okay, I don't mind that. There's just a little bit of layer sloppiness going on here, but that's okay. We're going to put this now in the background. Pull that up into here. Call this background. So as we go, our layers just get a little bit more organized. And I'm noticing that this hand got a little bit messed up in terms of tone. So just make a quick correction there. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all working pretty good. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the armor here, duplicate that out. And then let's do a replace color. Let's bring in a little bit of blue into this armor, just so we get a little bit of interesting color variation out of the gate for us to play with. And it's going to feel relatively blue, but it's actually going to just be kind of a gray. All right, we're just desaturating. And it's just, I did a replace color and I just grabbed like a really narrow value range and just dropped the saturation down. And it's not, there's not a whole lot of logic to it, but it just gets me thinking about having some color play happening in what feels more like a continuous tone before that, right? It feels kind of like a coloring book. We don't really want that. We want there to be a robustness in the colors within these regions. And the other way you can start to bring that in as well is through bringing in a little bit of warmth to some of the shadow areas in the skin. And we don't want him to feel alive necessarily, but we can bring in a little bit of this, and we don't have to worry about him feeling alive. He's going to feel still quite dead, I guarantee you. But the effect that this does too is it gives sense of that kind of blood pumping in his veins, the little bit of the subsurface scattering going on as the light is entering and exiting. But ultimately what we're going to end up doing on this piece is we're going to have some glow going on, which will be really fun to play with. Just as kind of a preview of that, I guess I can block a little bit of that in. Let's say we're going to do kind of a bright, glowing here and put a little outer glow on that for good measure. Oops. Sorry about your ears, guys. My smoke alarms decided to freak out randomly. That's very bizarre. Hopefully that just stops happening. I guess I'll have to mute myself when we're not hearing me say anything. Okay. And, we'll have this kind of bottom of the body start to be kind of spectral down here. So that'll be kind of doing that sort of a thing eventually, right? That's kind of where we'll get with the piece at some point. So I'm going to make this kind of like ripped, tattered flesh down here. And we'll also be bringing in a rim light into the scene on the back side here to help us describe some of these forms a little bit more. Just have the character kind of pop a bit off the background. Kind of blocking these ends, not as carefully as I would want to, just for the sake of the stream here, just so you guys get a little bit better sense of where I'm headed with this. Ultimately, this gives us kind of a preview of where it'll go. Okay, let's see. We can work a little bit longer on this. Our glow layer is a little too crazy there. It's encroaching on our hand. Let's pull that back. There we go. I want to render this armor up a little bit more here. Start establishing some of our hot spots on this armor as well. And I'm looking at my navigator too while I'm doing this whole thing. So this is like a easy thing to glance over at and get an immediate read of what does this look like at a distance. And I'm just kind of controlling my focal point, controlling the intensity of my light. You know, I can see that, you know, this spot on the breastplate here feels maybe a little bit too bright given that it's kind of tucked inside there. And I can see that here in the thumbnail, right? It just feels like it's a little bit too bright. So I'm going to go in here and just knock that back a little bit. And then it feels like it's definitely kind of tucked in further than the shoulder. And I wouldn't have been able to evaluate that as easily looking at it up close like this. It was really just glancing over here that I noticed that. So the navigator can be really helpful in that way.
At Ralph's, we know there's never a good time to run out of fresh. Luckily, our delivery and free pickup make it easy to grab what you need. So whether it's a few extra buns for the backyard barbecue or some miscellaneous munchies for movie night, we make it easy to get back to doing, well, whatever you were doing. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
And now you'll find more ways to save on your favorites. When you download digital coupons, you can use up to 5 times in one transaction. Ralph's, fresh for everyone.
Yeah, and at this point, really, it's just a matter of rendering, right? Like it's pretty much just zoning out, having fun with it, continuing to refine all the pieces, continuing to make the materials look more convincing. You know, but we've set ourselves up for success here. We've thought through the concept thoroughly. We've assessed the silhouette, the balance proportion. We have the scenes lighting in a decent spot, and we would basically just keep going through and refining all these parts. Yeah, a little bit of that energy coming out of the eyes there, smoking upward. So I did my best here to get as far as I could during the short stream here. But I think with that, we'll kind of wrap up. And you know, what I might do is I might not work on this piece and kind of just keep it on the back burner. That way, if I end up having to sub in again for another mentor, I can just kind of come back to this piece and we can see it progress together. So with that, again, thank you all for joining me for this stream. I hope you enjoyed it, and you know, continue to tune in to this Twitch channel for more awesome creative content from CG Spectrum. Okay, I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.